I'm really excited to have my next guest back. Boy, I hope we don't run into internet problems. It looks like the internet is not working as well as I thought it was. Ken Silva, welcome back to the show, Ken. This camera was working a moment ago, and now it's giving us a problem. But Ken, we're going to power through. Hopefully it will cooperate soon. How are you, Ken? Why don't you reintroduce yourself for people who maybe didn't see you last time you were with us here?
Sure, yeah, and your camera's frozen, but your voice is coming in pretty well.
Back.
So,
I think I'm back.
Okay, great. Yeah, I can see you. All right, good stuff, good stuff. So yeah, I've just been a longtime news reporter of 10 years that has really been digging into the Trump shooting as of late. I bet most of your viewers probably saw the episode we did maybe 2 months ago now when I obtained the autopsy report, and we've been communicating and digging continuously since then. So it's good to break down this so-called final report from the task force that I think has left a lot of people wanting.
Absolutely. And I want to make sure people know they can follow you on X at JD_cashless. Ken is a great follow on X. He's posting lots of excellent stuff. You can also read his work at headlineusa.com. Ken, I was pretty surprised to see them say that this is the final report from that thing. It feels like they've done a very minimal number of hearings and things like that. And so it was just very disappointing to see that as the final report. You've been through it extensively. Why don't you tell us what you saw in there and what really immediately jumped out at you?
Yeah, so the report's about 150 pages long, and there is some good new info in there that we will get to later. But overall, it was just really underwhelming because it's rehashed what we've known for months. I mean, half of the report is just another timeline of who said what and when and why they couldn't stop Crooks or what their official story is. And then they go, another 25% is recommendations. And I really haven't gotten into the recommendations because to me, that's kind of like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. I'll probably look at a little more closely into that later. But the real stuff's at the end of the report, specifically with the FBI's investigation. And yeah, like you said, this is the final report. And the chairman, Mike Kelly, and the ranking member, Jason Crow, were interviewed Sunday on Meet the Press saying, even though our task force is expiring, we're going to continue looking into this next Congress. We're stonewalled by the FBI, which is really disappointing, but we're going to keep digging. It's like, guys, you had subpoena power and you didn't exercise it. You did use it with the ATF to get some records, but you didn't exercise your power with the FBI. So why should we believe you that you're going to do this next Congress when you're like sitting on some subcommittee? You're not even the chairman. Like it's just I don't believe it for 1 second that they intend to pursue this seriously.
I'm totally with you, Ken. I've been really disappointed by this task force. Did you get a chance to see the video I made last week in Washington, D.C.? I went to their hearing and I had an opportunity to meet and speak with Clay Higgins. Did you get to see that at all?
I did, yeah. It was pretty entertaining footage, I must say.
Well, but what did you think, though? I mean, I had given him the report that I put together about the current status of Goodman versus the Beaver County ESU, which is the lawsuit that I had filed, the right to know lawsuit, and not the ESU, the District Attorney's Office. The District Attorney's Office has failed to provide the documents that they were required to provide, and I need to now take this to the Court of Common Pleas. But I gave that report to several members, including Mike Kelly, including Clay Higgins, and he basically ran away from me. He didn't seem to want to confront the empirical facts that I'm bringing forward in this right to know lawsuit. What was your impression of my interaction with him from that standpoint?
Yeah, it seemed to me like a continue of the cover up where they just only talk to approved media. I noticed he talked to that one reporter, and then you tried to ask a few questions, and she got snippy with you. And after she was done, Higgins kind of just ran away from you. Really disappointing. I will say it has happened to me before, and I just think these guys are approached, by 100 people every day, and they just don't want to deal with it. But that is the job. One time, I could say this. I had an interaction with Matt Gaetz earlier this year where I have some records suggesting that an FBI informant was used against Chuck Schumer. And I was trying to give these records to his office so they could actually track it down and confirm it. And I talked to Matt Gaetz, and he looked at my records. He's like, holy shit, they ran an informant at Schumer. He got my contact info. I gave him the records, gave him, everything, and I just never heard back from him. So this stuff happens all the time. With Higgins in particular, I don't have a lot of confidence with him. He has dug up a lot of good info on the Crooks case, but I mean, this is the same guy who earlier this year in Congress, he claimed to have evidence that there were these so-called ghost FBI informants that were bussed into the Capitol on the morning of January 6th. He's yet to follow up on that or provide any more details. It seems to me like if you had information about that, that's something that you should be shouting from the rooftops. So a strange guy on the one hand, he does seem serious about digging into certain things, but on the other hand, his ability to follow up seems lacking.
Yeah, and the thing that really, I agree with everything that you're saying there, and the thing that really disappointed me about the interaction with Clay Higgins is that it's pretty clear to me. I mean, I'm normally reluctant to say this because, I don't know, I just feel like these people are busy and they probably have no idea who the hell I am, but he seems to know because he was really covering a lot of the things that I was discussing, that John Cullen was discussing. Remember, he went to Butler, PA, and he was examining that first floor window at American Glass Research where I had identified an infrared laser in the window, and he went there to basically examine these claims, essentially debunk them, which was fine if that's what he wants to do. I don't think he successfully did that, but he has decided that he has. He hasn't looked at my in-depth analysis here. I don't know if I've shown this to you, but this is the whole controversy with muzzle flash versus headlights versus a laser. I don't know if you can see this clearly, but on the left here, I've isolated what I say is a laser pressed directly against the window. And then on the right, we can see this video of the headlights as the guy moves. And the key difference here is there's motion parallax as he moves. The headlights move across the window as the guy walks, whereas this video that I say is a laser, the guy walks the same amount, but the laser doesn't move in the window at all. The laser is locked on the glass right there. And so Clay Higgins seems to be, I don't know, like running through the motions to make it seem like there's an investigation going on. But I think he knew exactly who I was. I think he saw me coming, and I think he didn't want to talk about this.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd be curious to know exactly what Clay Higgins thinks about this case and what he does know. I remember you captured him on video, and by the way, thank you for getting that. Like his 20-minute interview, he did say some interesting things, including he's mapping out all the 5G towers around Crooks's home
God,
and
he
workplace.
got right on the bus to
like
Crazy Town with that, didn't he?
So yeah, if he's willing to look into that, then why? Like you have legitimate information that the original photo of the rooftop shooter was not embedded in that after action report. It was an altered version. Like that's actual real stuff that he should be actually looking into instead of getting into 5G and finding out that Crooks was like fully vaccinated and I don't know if is that his role in making guys like us look totally stupid and exploring different theories. Like it's makes one wonder.
I'm glad that you said that, and I want to make sure that people understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's crazy to presume that 5G poses health risks. I'm also not saying it's crazy to presume that any kind of medicine or vaccine, anything that is untested and unknown could be a potential risk. So I'm not poo-pooing that. But as you said, Clay Higgins seemed to want to ignore empirical evidence and focus on the most fringe possible theories. And I agree with you. I think he's doing that to make it seem that anybody who's looking at this stuff is crazy and on the fringe. Now, I want to be very careful about this next bit because we do want to get to the report, but you just mentioned something really important. I want to share a little bit with people. People who are sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth have had this report for a little while, and the reason I've done that is there's basically almost everything in here is going to get us dinged off of YouTube. But this is my report on the current status of the Goodman versus Beaver County District Attorney. And I agree with you. This is really actionable evidence here. I mean, what I've got is the pages of the Chuck Grassley report. On July 30th, Grassley had this former president of the United States after action report that had been given to him by Beaver County. The district attorney's office controls the emergency services unit. And this version of the report was almost completely redacted. Now, I can't, let's see, how can we do this? Okay, we can use you to redact the dead guy, I think. Here, I'm being very careful as I do this, but okay. If people do get on to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, or Subscribestar or Patreon, you can see this full thing. If I show it right now, the video will get kicked off of all these other platforms, but this is the document that lays out my allegations, as you've pointed out, of the police actually altering the photographic evidence of what's on the roof. And as you and I have discussed before, if I'm wrong, if that's crazy, if that's a conspiracy theory, the police could easily prove that by presenting the original HEIC image from Gian Vito's phone. And you would think they'd want to do that, but they have resisted this strenuously, which I think essentially proves my point. And Clay Higgins seemed to want to resist this as well. It's like you said, it's almost as if there's a script that they're playing through.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about where you are with your legal battle against Beaver County, because the appeals panel issued a decision a couple weeks ago, but has there been any follow-up, or what's like the upshot?
I have been trying to reach the district attorney himself, and he has been avoiding me. And so I do believe my only option now is like a mandamus lawsuit in the Court of Common Pleas. So this is the final determination. It was issued on October 28th, so more than a month ago. And it says that on July 29th, 2024, Jason Goodman submitted a request to the Beaver County District Attorney's Office pursuant to the right to know law, seeking photos from a detective's iPhone. The District Attorney's Office purported to grant the request by email on August 26, 2024, and sent a USB device via email on August 30th, 2024. On September 18th, the requester filed an appeal with the Office of Open Records alleging that the photographs provided were altered with additional response, and that additional responsive records exist. Anyway, it goes on and says that the District Attorney's Office completely ignored this case. They didn't respond at all, and for the various reasons discussed in this document, the appeal was granted. The District Attorney's Office was required to provide the requested records within 30 days. And of course, 30 days was November 28th. They have been, as I said, avoiding me, not providing this evidence. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that is truly remarkable. I'm wondering if the appeals commission can do anything, or I think you just nailed it. You'll have to spend a lot of money and file your own complaint in common pleas. And I think that might be what Beaver County was hoping, that you'd eventually become disinterested and give this up. And that's why they're ignoring you. They're going to make you force a lawsuit that actually would penalize them with contempt of court if they don't actually respond.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't want that, but I'm ready to do that, and I'm going to be starting that. I just have been on this road trip, and now, unfortunately, today I'm in a spot where the internet is not as good as I thought it was when I got here. But hopefully, my camera will come back. Why don't you take us through, Ken, a bit of the report and your impressions from what you've seen so far? I know you've been doing a ton of work going over the thing. What have you got?
Okay, sure. Yeah, let's get into it. So, as I got to imagine everybody watching this is pretty familiar with, the basic details of the Butler July 13th case. So I'll just get into what I thought to be new. I do believe the report confirms that it was Butler ESU commander Ed Lenz, his decision to put local snipers inside the AGR building. And I know your internet's not working and the screen isn't working very well, but that's on page 56 if you want to show viewers. I can quote it. It says Butler ESU decided to position one of their sniper teams in the grandstand area. That would be Washington SWAT in the south side. And then place a second team inside the second story windows in one of the AGR buildings. According to Butler ESU, there were several reasons they did not place the team on the rooftop. They get into those reasons. They say they'd have to have 360-degree coverage, and they didn't think they could do that. But in any event, Butler ESU presented those plans to the Secret Service in their walkthrough, I think on July 10th or 11th, and the Secret Service didn't provide any feedback. So at the end of the day, it was Commander Lenz's decision. And I'll let you comment on that if you want, or if you just
Sure.
want me to keep on getting
No,
into the
I
new
do want
stuff,
to
I can
comment on that
continue.
because you said something really interesting, that you felt that this task force in general, and I agreed with you, it focused on the failures of the Butler County and the Beaver County, the local law enforcement, and particularly the Secret Service. And the thing that I found astounding about that is that in the hearings, everybody kept reiterating that the solution to this problem was to give the Secret Service more money. They said, that's the solution. We need more money. And it was almost like by being self-effacing, by admitting to the failures, there was a sort of mea culpa, and it was just setting the stage for, I don't know, it just really felt like every single one of the Congress people was prompting Roe in a way that was just leading to the solution being more money. Did you feel that way?
I totally agree. That seems to be the case after every one of these kind of major terrorism events, after Oklahoma City, after 9/11. It's like the agencies that fail get, massive influx of resources. It's just perverse incentives, but, that's the nature of living in a bureaucratic state, I suppose.
Yeah.
I will say the report, it does. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, along the lines of what you were saying, we've got the same thing happening now with these mystery drones coming. Well, they deny that it's from an Iranian mothership, but we've been hearing that there are drones flying over New Jersey, and I find it difficult to imagine that the United States Air Force, the CIA, every satellite that we have, it's strange to me that a drone the size of an SUV could fly over New Jersey for even one day and that we would have no idea what it is. Again, the stench of them wanting to say, hey, we need counter UAS technology all over New Jersey, I can smell that already.
And counter UAS technology is actually discussed in this report where they
Yes.
want to, give it to every Secret Service unit. Which brings us to, I guess, I might have said that, I should have said this at the outset. So I think the staffers on the task force, clearly they did this investigation, and the actual lawmakers, other than maybe Clay Higgins, who did his own legwork, but like Mike Kelly and ranking member Jason Crow don't even know the basic facts. On Sunday at Meet the Press, Jason Crow starts talking about how Secret Service brought its own drone, which they bought off the commercial market, and they couldn't get it to fly, so they just kept it in the box. That that's just totally false. He's confusing the drone. What actually happened is they had a drone detection system that they couldn't get online. And so Jason Crow confused the drone with the drone detection system, which shows you that he didn't even deeply investigate the case or understand what he was dealing with. And honestly, if we lived in any kind of just country, that would be like grounds for saying, no, we need to do this investigation over. If the chairman and the ranking member don't even know the most basic facts, like what are we even doing here?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And, the other thing is there was some interviewing of Rafael. He's questioned Rafael Eduardo Castro, but I want to ask, where did we get that information that they had a drone detection system? Because that's not really counter UAS, and I think it's possible that all of the big deal that I sort of made about the counter UAS system being there might have caused them to want to counteract what I was saying with a story along the lines. What evidence have you seen that there was a drone detection system there?
That comes from the Senate Homeland Security's investigation, which was much better than the task force's for the simple fact that they published interview transcripts. That's where John Cullen, the interview transcript with the sniper who said that he thinks they were shot at Hercules 2.
Right.
That comes from the Senate Homeland Security, which also published its interview transcript with Castro. And Castro talks about troubleshooting the drone detection system all morning, can't get it figured out. Finally, he gives up, but then the tech support calls him back and says, well, hey, I think, check the wiring. He walks out of the command center, goes by Trump's podium and borrows an Ethernet cable from Trump's audio visual team, not even a government agency, comes back and brings the system back online just before 4:30. And mind you, according to the official story, Crooks flew his drone from 351 to 402. So the detection system was online like 20 minutes after Crooks flew his drone. It's just, it boggles the mind. The transcript also does get into what you asked about. He said that the Secret Service has detection systems and mitigation systems, and he had the former one. It was just a detection system, and I guess the task force wants to buy this mitigation, the higher technology, and give it to the Secret Service. That's one of the outcomes of this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes back to how can we get them more money, more equipment, and just do this big, mea culpa kind of thing. But, there was early on, I'm looking for it now and I'm not seeing it. Chuck Grassley had released some statement that the Secret Service flew a drone. And there's so much video that seems to look like things flying around that Palmer Luckey wants us to believe are bugs or birds or something. But I mean, all these guys seem super nervous when I question them. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've heard my different conversations with Rafael Eduardo Castro, et cetera, and certainly the interview that he gave to the Senate committee. It happened after I spoke to him here. I mean, you've heard this, right, where I called him up?
Yeah, I did. That's very interesting.
Eduardo, is that you? Can you hear me? Is that Eduardo?
Who's speaking?
It's Jason. How are you, man?
I'm sorry, it's who?
It's Jason. I wanted to ask you about the drone you were flying in Butler, Pennsylvania. Was it an Andeville counter UAS drone? And why has your name been hidden?
Oh, I'm sorry, who do you work for?
I don't work for anybody. This is Jason. I work for myself. You were the drone operator, the counter UAS drone operator, right? Is this Special Agent Eduardo Castro?
Have I reached?
How did you get this number? Eduardo Castro? I don't work for anyone. I have a show called Crowdsource the Truth. You were the drone operator during the Donald Trump assassination attempt, right? What was the function of the drone you were flying?
Sir, this is a government phone number for official business only. Do not call this number again.
I mean, isn't that so suspicious, Ken? Because also he's listed on the documents as counter UAS. It's not detection, it's counteracting them. That's a very specific field. And I mean, there's only a limited number of manufacturers who even make counter UAS technology. I'm getting a call now. I thought I had everything locked down in this car. Oh, and I just inadvertently answered it, and it's Charles Ortel. Charles, I'm on air right now with Ken Silva. I was trying to not answer it, but I got to call you back. I'm sorry.
No problem. Bye.
Sorry about that, everybody. Boy, I tell you, running a broadcast from inside the car is chaos, Ken, and I really apologize for all of that. But back to the counter UAS. Detection is not the same as counter. I feel like this is a made-up story, including false testimony. I don't have proof of that, but that's what I think.
I wouldn't be surprised. The official story, I believe, is that the local police offered the Secret Service drones. The Secret Service turned it down, and then those local drones, they launched them into the sky after the shooting. I've got actually I just filed a records request. I don't have a lot of hopes for this, but I did file one with the FAA for records on Butler. And who knows, maybe some interesting stuff will come out of that. I doubt they'll even give me anything, but maybe in like 2 years, like for all the complaints of the Pennsylvania right to know law system I have, it's far superior to FOIA in the federal system. I will add that as a little sidebar.
Yes, I agree. You know what? I actually have already, I've already put in a FOIA with the FAA, and
oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, but they basically said they determined that the more information I was requested about waivers and everything, it's public record on the Part 107. I wrote to them, I'm requesting records related to any unmanned aerial systems, counter UAS or drone flights in the Butler area on July 13th, specifically records of all drone flights recorded by the FAA. And they're pretty much stonewalling. I mean, they don't want to tell us, and they're saying it's public and this and that. But I've seen zero evidence that Thomas Crooks was even there, Ken. I think everything we're hearing about him, they've got this, bomb remote control. Where's the drone controller? Where's the drone itself? How is he flying that? I don't believe that at all.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell. I've yet to see proof either way. I will say that it does. I would tend to believe that Crooks was really there. I think the police really did respond to his house that night. His parents are apparently facing criminal charges. I talked to some of the neighbors. I mean, he was a real person and everything like that. And I think he was probably making bombs in his parents' home. So
what makes you say that?
I'm open to what's that?
The bombs. What makes you say that? Because to me, that's one of the biggest problems. I mean, the kid knows how to build electronics, build computers, mess around with Arduino boards and stuff like that. But that's a big difference from building explosives and messing with chemicals. What makes you think he built the bombs?
I talked to some neighbors who said they were evacuated from the neighborhood that night because the bomb squad came to the house. Again, that's not direct evidence. That could have been a total psyop on the neighbors, but it's the best evidence we have.
Hang on.
Hang
on, though.
Sorry, go.
That's evidence that the bomb squad was there and told them there were bombs, but they never said, oh yeah, I saw him in the garage and he burned down the garage and that kid was always messing with fireworks and stuff. You would know if there was a 17-year-old kid in your neighborhood who was always blowing stuff up and was just good with bombs and explosives. It's not the type of thing that your average 17, 18 high schooler is doing right now. I mean, I'm sure if you have friends who have kids like I do, they're all into not all, but like I have friends who have young sons who build those, Raspberry Pi things and build their PC with the gaming and everything. And that I get. But building a deadly IED, if you haven't been in the military, I don't buy it. They evacuated that neighborhood so that they could tell everybody on the news. Am I cutting out?
Hey, your point is taken. I get my other circumstantial reason for believing that he did build bombs is because I think he was on Discord, which is kind of when you're getting into these extremist chat groups, is really a cesspool for domestic terrorism. I mean, earlier this year, there was a guy who worked for the Pentagon was spreading bomb making manuals online in an attempt to like entrap this militia. That
Wow.
was like the Virginia Cacoas case. So when I heard that Crooks was making bombs, it might be my confirmation bias, but I'm like, okay, this kid was groomed online. There were feds or other spooky actors, maybe people in Eastern Europe, spreading explosives materials, or like manuals, no, like how-to manuals, and he might have been experimenting with, yeah, they call it hillbilly C4, ANFO, the same stuff that McVeigh supposedly used in the OKC. It triggered my confirmation bias. So yeah, I don't have any direct evidence, but the story sounds plausible.
We're going to disagree on that. So you said that the
Fair enough.
parents, you said that the parents are facing criminal charges. Obviously, if bombs are being built in a house that they own, even if it's their son and they don't know it, if he's cooking meth, if he's building bombs, they own the house. Why aren't they in jail right now?
Yeah, and that puzzles me too. I figured, if I were running this conspiracy, I would charge the parents right now and make them take a plea deal before the new DOJ gets into office. But that's, assuming there is some kind of really dark, nefarious conspiracy afoot. We know there's a criminal investigation because, I know you've kind of have a dispute with the guy, Jack Posobiec, but his information is solid. He submitted a FOIA request with the community college for records on Crooks and was denied. And the reason for the denial is there is a federal grand jury probe into what happened at Butler. And that's, so they denied the records because there's an ongoing grand jury investigation. And I have to imagine that would be to the parents. Like, who else would it be? The guys he was talking to online, or possibly others involved? I don't know. I'm just assuming it's the parents.
Well, we're going to disagree again about Jack Posobiec because he's an incredibly disingenuous and dishonest guy who basically just denies anything about the second angle of fire in Butler, PA. He denies everything about Yearick, and the way that he acted when I approached him on the street in New York City was very telling. I've known Jack for about 7 years, and prior to that encounter in New York City outside the Madison Square Garden Donald Trump rally, I did not totally dislike and distrust Jack in the way that I do now. I just thought he was a bit of a prick, but we always sort of would see each other around D.C. and the last time I saw Jack before that was at the New York Young Republicans dinner, and I had decided I was going to pay a lot of money to get into that dinner to hopefully meet some important people, and that worked. But I got in there, and Jack was there, and I just got into a conversation with him and a few people, and he had this very distinctive lapel pin, and I said, Jack, what is that lapel pin? And he said, it's naval intelligence. And I said, so you're recording the whole event with that? And he laughed. And that was the kind of relationship that we had. We would sort of, playful razzing. I wouldn't say we were friends, but he's an enemy of mine now because he lied to the NYPD to try and get me arrested. And that is no joke. You can't do that. He told the NYPD, people go back and listen to that. He said I was harassing his wife. That was an out-and-out lie. I didn't even realize his wife was there until he said she was there. I was speaking to him. And for somebody to lie to the police to try to get you arrested, you have no idea what's going to happen to you once the police take control of your life. They stick you in a jail cell. I could have been killed. So Jack Posobiec made himself a lifelong enemy of me right there in that moment. And I respect you completely, Ken, but I got to push back. Everything that guy is saying about Butler, PA is fucking bullshit, according to me. And he is pushing the story that it was Thomas Crooks on the roof which I totally disagree with. And again, we cannot ignore the fact that the Beaver County ESU is desperately trying to keep me away from that HEIC photo. If it was Thomas Crooks on the roof, it would be Thomas Crooks dead and Thomas Crooks in the photo, and they would say Goodman is an idiot and a conspiracy theorist. Here's the original photo. Get out of here. Stop talking about this, and that would be done. But the fact that they haven't done it, I'm telling you, Ken, I think it's almost checkmate. I've basically proven that it's not Thomas Crooks.
Yeah, let me just clarify. I know I'm not saying like take everything Jack Posobiec says at face value. I'm just saying this specific point about the grand jury is solid information because he published the FOIA denial from the community college that says there's a grand jury investigation. I mean, yeah, I've read Posobiec's book on Butler, and there's mistakes throughout the book. He says that Crooks's rifle, or assuming it's Crooks, didn't have a scope on it. When you could look, it did have optics. So
Yes.
He said the shooter used iron sights. So there's some like basic errors in his book like that. But the grand jury probe, I do believe, is true.
Yeah, he had a holographic sight. John Cullen identified the brand, and it's, unmistakable. I agree. I'm not saying everything Jack says is false. I'm saying Jack is a naval intelligence professional deception agent. And sure, there is a grand jury, but do you know how easy it is to impanel a grand jury if you're a U.S. attorney? And if you say, hey, this guy Ken Silva, Jason Goodman, John Cullen, whoever, these guys are getting to the bottom of some evidence that we don't want them to talk about. Let's impanel a grand jury, stick a bunch of evidence that we don't want anybody to get to see in front of people and tie it up for 2 or 3 years. Then we'll get Jack Posobiec to tell everybody that that's happening. It's absolutely true. I'm not denying that it isn't happening. I'm just saying that Jack is very adept at inserting himself into these types of operations to create exactly what you and I are debating right now. I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I just think that it's positioned to be this incredibly deceptive thing where he's right, but he's also lying. Now, I just want to take you to one other thing that's really important because where was it? I just had it here. It's kind of difficult for me to, I think this is it. Yeah, okay. So I'm sure you remember seeing this stuff because we're talking about Crooks, and allegedly Crooks is now dead on a roof here. So if that's true, let's just examine some stuff here for a second. I'm sure you recall, the screen is not cooperating here. I'm sure you recall when we saw this imagery of Crooks leaving the, not cooperating. Right away after the incident, there was footage of his father going to the supermarket or something like that. And he was with a person who some people think is the sister. Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at this for a second, because this is quite interesting. I want to see this one first.
Matthew, why would your son want to kill the president? Matthew, why would your son want to kill the president?
Back off! No comment. No comment!
Were there any warning signs, Matthew?
No comment.
So let's just review that for a second. The guy on the right in the hood and the mask, we're well past COVID. It's hot as hell. It's July 15th or something. Jeans, hoodie, mask, and the voice. First of all, he's very nervous. He tells the press first to back off. Then the father calmly reminds him, no comment. Then he repeats, no comment. Let's just watch it again.
Matthew, why would your son want to kill the president?
Back off! No comment. Back off! No comment. No comment!
Back off! No comment. I say that's Crooks right there. Then let's look at this.
Mr. Crooks, was there anything that might have made you aware of what your son was up to?
Mr. Crooks, can you explain why your son is such a limited social circle?
Is there any statement you'd be willing to share with us right now, Mr. Crooks?
I gotta pee.
Come on now. The guy's making jokes. His son was allegedly shot to death the other day. Here we have him again. Somebody dressed up as the Invisible Man in the middle of July in Pittsburgh. This is so implausible to me, Ken. I don't know. What do you think?
So is the back off comment that came from the masked person? That sounded like
Yeah.
a girl, right?
Didn't sound like a girl to me. It sounded, I mean, keep in mind, Thomas Crooks is a skinny little late bloomer, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid. He doesn't have a deep voice, but I wouldn't say it sounded like a girl. The sister is pretty heavy set, and this is still kind of like a skinny person. And again, the sister also, you've seen pictures of her, she has really pretty serious adult acne, and people I've known who have had that are very sensitive about putting things on their face. Why would somebody with adult acne be wearing a COVID mask in the middle of July? I don't think it's the sister.
I must admit I have not seen a picture of the sister. That's interesting. I'd like to see that for sure. You actually just jostled my memory. So I was watching a documentary by Jesse Walters on Fox Nation about Butler, and I saw that same masked person in front of Crooks's home. It was captured, I think, by Jesse's documentary crew or maybe a local news outlet.
Huh.
I just tweeted it out. Hopefully, it's showing up on my timeline by now. If you want to check it out,
Yeah.
I think it's about at like the 20-second mark of what I just should be at the top of my timeline.
Yeah, let's take a look here. I haven't seen that Jesse Waters documentary, but okay, so here we are. JD Cashless on X.com. At the top of the timeline, we've got the same masked person. Here, let's play this.
Demanded answers, starting with Thomas Crooks. Along with the rifle, cops found that detonator in his pocket.
It is a remote control device. It's gray in color, about 5-6 inches tall.
It could have set off the two explosive devices they found in his car.
No
they
way.
found another device in his room at home.
This does not sound like your average.
Right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Learn his ball making
Ooh, that's
skills.
great. Getting into the Hyundai. I'm telling you,
Devices. Whoa.
that's Crooks. That's not the sister.
It's very interesting. I'll say that much. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know who that is, but
Here's
okay,
the
so
sister right here.
That's the sister. Okay.
She's heavy. There are other pictures of her that I've seen on Facebook. And the other thing I wanted to show you is the place that he's leaving when he's here. This second video, let's look at this again for a second.
Mr. Crooks, was there anything that might have made
You see
you
where
aware
they
of what
are
your
in the
son was up to?
background. Look at that building in the back there. You see that? Oh, sorry, I've got you in the way for the viewers here. There's a brick building behind them right there. That is Quinn Loge, the law firm. That is one of the biggest law firms in Pittsburgh. And I'll tell you something else about Jack Posobiec. This is interesting too. Did you see the video that I made where I went to Pittsburgh and it was, I had been told that Max Yearick was alive. Did you see that video?
Yeah, I saw you got the umbrella and
Right.
yeah.
I was told by Doug Hagman. Do you know Doug Hagman?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, he's kind of an old hat, you know. He was around for quite a while here. So let's see, this is going to be, if I just search for Yearick, I think I can find this. Yeah, here we go, Maxwell Yearick, dead or alive. So Doug Hagman is a guy who's been around for quite a while, and he called me. I hadn't spoken to him in years, and he called me, and he said, oh, Max Yearick is alive. I went to his apartment, and I spoke to him. And I said, Doug, you must be mistaken. There's so much evidence that the guy is dead. How do you know it was Yearick? And he said, well, the landlord who let me in addressed him as Max, and he's a disgusting stoner. The apartment smelled of weed. In retrospect, it was sort of like too many details, you know? And the thing that's interesting is I went there weeks later. I didn't go right away. I went weeks later, and I checked out this, went to so this is a restaurant, Big Jim's, catty corner to the apartment. Nobody in there knew him. People who worked there 14 years and stuff. How do you live across the street from the one restaurant in the neighborhood? You never in there for lunch, dinner, a beer. Nobody in there knows the guy. I showed them pictures of Yearick. They never saw him. Then I went over to the apartment itself, and there were Amazon packages there for somebody not Max Yearick. And the name on the packages matches the name that the internet believes lives in that apartment. There's more details to be shared about that person, but there's a lot of evidence that indicates that that was deliberately told to me to get me to go there. And something very interesting happened. Weeks after I went here, Posobiec, just in an interview or something, mentioned that he had hired a private investigator. And I said to myself, wait a minute, who else in this whole thing has hired a private investigator? And Doug Hagman did say to me that he was hired by someone, well, I can't tell you who. I had presumed that it was the Crooks family, because who would want to convince Jason Goodman that Thomas Crooks is dead and Maxwell Yearick is alive? I figured maybe the Crookses. Those packages there were not addressed to Maxwell Yearick, and it seems to me that Jack Posobiec would want to fool me into thinking that Thomas Crooks is alive and Maxwell Yearick had nothing to do with this, because I think that Maxwell Yearick is involved in something much bigger that I suspect Jack is trying to cover up. This is speculation, of course, but it's based on lots and lots of evidence. And I don't know, what do you think about all of this?
Well, until if and when Maxwell Yearick and Kenan Hooper are actually accounted for, like it's definitely the theory is open. It's in the game. I'll say that much. It confuses me, like, why they would go through all those complicated layers for Butler. Like, what would the upshot of using Crooks as a patsy be? It doesn't really make sense. But again, until we find Yearick, if and when we do, and Hooper, I agree. I think it's totally legitimate to ask these kind of questions.
Yeah. And I mean, the why, it is I agree. It's difficult to answer. I mean, anytime you go to motive, who knows? Could be any number of reasons. People have suggested that Maxwell Yearick was in Ukraine. Now, that would make sense. I think you could learn how to build IEDs in a war zone. I think you could learn how to be a sniper in a war zone. That's different than the high school Raspberry Pi Club. They obviously would not want people to know that they were training mercenaries in Ukraine if that was happening. So I don't know. And how they get to Thomas Crooks being the patsy, I mean, again, I don't know. Maybe there's families that are part of these intelligence communities that I just can't explain that. I don't want to go into too much speculation with that stuff, but this goes to my case against Beaver County. The ear matches Crooks, and that is maybe key in them being able to convince everybody that it's Crooks dead on the roof. But I don't know. I mean, Crooks would be in the witness protection program essentially right now. That's great that you brought that Jesse Waters footage to our attention of him outside their house. I hadn't seen that before. I think, Ken, to some degree, they want to just confuse every aspect of it so it becomes extremely difficult for us to know anything about the real facts of what happened. Did you happen to get a chance to see this video just the other day of me going to Max Yearick's mother's condo?
I saw one where you called her. Yeah, you said you've called her like 10 times or something, and you actually went there.
Yeah, I never spoke to her, but I went to the condo where she lived at one point. But look, there's construction or something going on. There's painters there, nobody home, ladders and stuff inside. Somebody's just moved out. So that was pretty interesting as well. Why is Max Yearick's mother moving out? Yearick, I haven't been able to call him. He had a social media presence. He hasn't posted anything on DeviantArt, hasn't posted anything on X. Where the hell are these guys, Ken?
Yeah, I also want to know, and this is, again, very low-hanging fruit that the task force should have picked, Like, who was behind that Jew-gazing account
Right.
that immediately on July 13th, the guy says, "Oh, you got the wrong guy." Like,
Right.
okay, that's a hoax, but that's one strange hoax. And who actually perpetrated that hoax? Why? How were they able to do that? Like, we need to know these questions, answers to the questions.
Yeah, I agree completely. I forgot to tell you one important thing about my trip to that Max Yearick apartment. Do you know what it's right around the corner from?
Well, when you said Myrtle Beach, I'm like, oh, the
No, that's the
Carolinas,
mother. That's the mother. I'm back in Pittsburgh now. That apartment
Oh,
that I was told belonged to Maxwell Yearick is so incredibly close to this Quinn Loge office where I allege Crooks was leaving with his father. That also contributed to me thinking that the Crooks family was trying to convince me that Yearick was still alive. For all I know, Jack Posobiec is working with the Crooks family, but that apartment is extremely close to the Quinn Loge law firm offices.
okay, very, very interesting. I guess the only other possible thing I could think of is like Uric, he's an Antifa guy. Maybe he just became like a homeless crackhead and totally fell off the grid, and that's why he doesn't even know Trump got shot at. Like that, maybe that could be a explanation for why he's disappeared.
Well, I'll tell you what, maybe that's true. But when I've called his mother, I've only left her 1 or 2 voicemail messages. I've called many times, but one time I left a message. I'm not antagonizing her. I'm trying to be, sensitive and thoughtful and everything. And I said something to the effect of, Mrs. Yearick, my name is Jason Goodman. I wonder if I could speak to you about Maxwell. And so if her son had become a crackhead, or if he was dead, why wouldn't any mother be curious about a stranger calling to talk about her son, particularly if he was a crackhead living on the streets? Wouldn't she call me back? Wouldn't she pick up the phone? Except if he was involved in something like this. Then she doesn't want to talk to anybody because she's been told, move out of that apartment, don't talk. She's in the witness protection program too. See, what I'm thinking is, these guys look so similar that if you put them in the same clothing, look at the structure of their, they almost look like twins. Same eye color, shape of the nose, the chin. The hair color is similar. You put a hat on these dudes, you put them in that tactical shirt or whatever, or grow their hair the same length, and you photograph them from a distance. I don't think you could tell one of these guys from the other. And they were arrested at the same time at a Trump rally in Pittsburgh. Now, Yearick, I think both of them, but definitely Yearick, signed a plea agreement. And we know what happens when you do that. They let him out of jail. Or, he got a reduced sentence, right? He got like a year in jail. And then they might say, oh, hey, you work for us now. So you're going to go to Ukraine. This guy's a maniac. You said it. He's an Antifa guy, so he loves chaos. Maybe he likes the idea of going to Ukraine and learning how to become a sniper and build bombs. And then they get him to come back here. I don't think he's down for a suicide mission. I think he's deceived. They tell him something like, oh, you're not going to get shot. You're going to be below the roof line or whatever. Don't worry about it. I think it's a much more difficult play to convince somebody to go on a suicide mission than it is to fool them into doing something that results in them getting killed. And also, why is Crooks going, if I'm correct, why is Crooks going to Quinn Loge with his father? You saw that house. No offense, it's a tiny little house. That's not a rich family. Quinn Loge is like the most expensive law firm in Pittsburgh. It seems to me that, we got that BlackRock commercial and everything. I don't know, but I've seen a lot of evidence that people who are in espionage and, these types of government agency businesses, that's a family business for the same reason that the mafia is. If you're good at shutting your mouth, maybe your son is too. And I think somewhere along the way, somebody made a deal where after high school, Thomas Crooks was going to agree to be involved in something like this. Then they're going to put him in the witness protection program and pay him Name the number. 1 million, 5 million? What's the number? 5 million is going to be nothing to the FBI, but it is enough to go hire Quinn Loge. And by the way, if the deal is, their plan is to kill Trump, and then your son's going to go into the witness protection program. He'll go away and live in, where? Name the place. Bali, Indonesia, maybe nowhere. Just go underground in Pittsburgh and hang around for a while. Come back in 5 years with long hair and a beard and a different look and whatever. Nobody will remember it's you. Here's your 5 million. Now the deal goes sideways. They miss Trump. The guy on the roof is dead. Holy crap, what do? Don't call the FBI. We better go get a lawyer. Now they go to Quinn Loge, and then what? Quinn Loge does what? Do they call Jack Posobiec? Do they call Doug Hagman? Why are people telling me to go to this apartment? And by the way, Doug Hagman hasn't returned a phone call, a text message, an email since I went there. Why is that? It's weird, isn't it?
That is very weird. And to your point about Yearick and the resemblance to Hooper and Crooks and all the lookalikes, I will say, remember, there's that false sighting where Greg Nickel and Mirko say they saw Crooks at 4:30 when it turns out Crooks, or who we think is Crooks, was on the other side of the site. There's also the fact that there were plainclothes Pennsylvania State Police officers at the Sheets northeast of the AGR building that were deployed to look for Crooks, when those guys look like Crooks and they were dressed in the white shorts and the gray shirt.
Right.
And I will say the Blaze News journalist Steve Baker, I've disagreed with a lot of his takes, but he did make a good point that was Crooks, or in your case, like Yearick or whoever, groomed to look like those PSP undercovers just to confuse? And one other thing I'll add, just for historical context, there's a book called Aberration in the Heartland of the Real. It's a PhD thesis biography of Timothy McVeigh. And that book goes into multiple McVeigh sightings on April 19th. It's probably the spookiest part of the book, including one guy that looked like McVeigh after the bomb went off. He was a couple blocks north. He turned around and told an Oklahoma City resident, well, ain't that a bitch? And just walked away, real coldly. And so I think with these kind of weird ops, that kind of stuff does happen just to generate conflicting
Confusion.
Witness reports.
Yes.
Yeah, confusion, exactly. So it's totally plausible. Whether it's probable or 100% likely, I'm not there yet, but I'm open to the possibility for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're in agreement now for sure, and there were a lot of similar-looking people on site that day. You and I have so many shows that we need to do, Ken. We're running out of time. Oh man, the battery is running low here. So there's a bunch of stuff in the car that I got to attend to in just a moment. But did you happen to see this parody video that I created? When I first heard this report from Chuck Grassley that there was a drone that remember there was a report that they said they had to call tech support. So that was initially they were saying it was to fly the drone. You're now saying that was tech support for the drone detection system. I think that's a little bit of a fluid narrative, if you want to ask me, because I remember distinctly hearing that story for the first time, and I stayed up quite late creating this video. Let me play this for you in case you haven't seen this.
I haven't.
Sorry.
Fox News exclusive. A new report out tonight from Senator Ron Johnson reveals the Secret Service did have a drone, but they didn't have anybody who could fly it.
No, wait a minute. It's not playing the video. That's frozen on the iPad for some reason. Here we go. Wow.
Fox News exclusive. A new report out tonight from Senator Ron Johnson reveals the Secret Service did have a drone, but they didn't have anybody who could fly it. They had to call a tech support center.
Ken, I apologize. Technical problems here. People can see that on my X account. It's a really funny, I think. It's just not playing. It's not even playing here. Internet problems. Ken, I'm so sorry, man. I'm going to get this sorted out, and the next time I have you on, I will make sure that everything goes smoothly. It's amazing how well it works before you begin, and then it all goes to pot. But I want to remind people to check out your work on headlineusa.com. Ken is doing incredible work. Ken, what's next for you?
Let's see what's next. I am waiting on. Well, I can't actually disclose what's next. Let's just say I've been fighting some legal battles for records behind closed doors. You might have seen we're denied Pittsburgh body cam footage. That was disappointing and just inexplicable in my view. But yeah, the fight continues. That's the basics.
Absolutely. And people are going to follow you on X at JD Cashless. It's a great follow. People are going to be really interested in the stuff that Ken is posting. And I want to thank you for coming back to the show and being patient with some of these technical difficulties. People can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth. And remember, I couldn't do these trips without your support. Please visit odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Ken, thanks for joining me. Have a great day, everybody.